Masechet Megillah Daf Gimel. We're going to start 3 lines from the bottom of Daf Beis Amud Beis. In the previous sugya we saw a quote in the name of Rabbi Yirmiyah, Ve'itema Reb Chia bar Abba. It was not clear whether it was Rabbi Yirmiyah or Reb Chia bar Abba, and the Gemara is now going to bring another few memories, the common denominator between them all being that it was not clear whether it was Rabbi Yirmiyah or Reb Chia bar Abba. Says the Gemara, V'omar Rabbi Yirmiyah, says Rabbi Yirmiyah, V'itema Reb Chia bar Abba, and others say it was not Rabbi Yirmiyah, it was Reb Chia bar Abba. Mantzapach, the 5 letters that we know have final letters, the Chof, Mem, Nun, Tzadik and Pei. Tzeifim Omrum, the Nevi'im, they are the ones that introduced this concept. The concept that 5 letters have a different shape when they are final letters. Asks the Gemara of a Tizbara, can it possibly be that the Nevi'im introduced a new concept in Torah? V'oksiv, does it not say in the Pasuk, Eile ha-mitzvahs, that these are the mitzvahs that were given to Moshe by Hashem at Sinai? She'ein novi rishoi lechadish davar me'ato. After Sinai, a novi is not allowed to introduce anything new. V'oid. And another question, Ha'omer Rav Chizda. Rav Chizda said, Mem v'samach shehoyu beluchos, the letter Mem, and it's obviously talking about the shape of the final Mem, which is a square, and the Samach being a circle, she beluchos, when they were written in the Luchos, b'nes hayu oimdim. It was a nes, because we know that the Mem and the Samach has a border, and in the circle in the middle, it's just empty. And we know the Luchos were etched out. The letters were engraved from side to side. It went right through. So if you make a final Mem, then the piece in the middle ought to fall out. So Rav Chizda said it was a nes that the piece stayed in. And which 2 letters were a nes? The Mem and the Samach. So the Samach always was a Samach and remained a Samach. The Mem, the only Mem which needs a nes is the final Mem. If it was the Nevi'im that introduced this Mem, and before the Nevi'im there was only a regular Mem, then what Mem in the Luchos needed a nes? Says the Gemara, it's true that Mehava Hava, even before the Nevi'im, the existence of these 5 final letters existed. They didn't know which Mem was the one that goes in the middle of a word, and which Mem is the one that goes at the end of the word. And so too for all the 5 letters. Also, Tzoifim v'tkinu, the Nevi'im, they were the ones that established that Psuchim be'emtza teva, the open Mem, and all the other of the 5 letters that we know as being in the middle are be'emtza teva, v'stumim, the Mem sosum, as well as the other final letters, b'seifa teva, the ones that go at the end of the word. Asks the Gemara, seif, at the end of the day, eile ha-mitzvahs, she'ein novi osid lechadish davar me'ata. How could the Chachomim determine and be kivea something that they didn't have the Messiah from Moshe Rabbeinu? Elo, says the Gemara, shachachum v'chazru v'yizdum. Of course, already from the time of Moshe Rabbeinu, it was clear which letter was in the middle of the word and which of the 5 letters are the final letters. But at some point in time, it got forgotten, and the Nevi'im, they reinstated. They were the ones that established that the truth always was that these letters go in the middle and these go at the end. Continues the Gemara with another memra that was said by either Rabbi Yirmiyah or Reb Chia bar Abba. V'omar Rabbi Yirmiyah, says Rabbi Yirmiyah, v'yiteimer Reb Chia bar Abba, some suggest it was Reb Chia bar Abba. Targum shel Torah, the author of the Targum on the Chumash, Unkles Hager Oimri. It was written by, or said by, Unkles Hager, and that's what we know as Targum Unkles. Mipi Rebbe Eliezer, Rebbe Yeshua. And Unkles was the one that received it b'Mesorah from his Rebbes, that was Rebbe Eliezer and Rebbe Yeshua. Tirgum shel Nevi'im, the Targum on the Nevi'im, Yonasan ben Azil Omri. It was Yonasan ben Azil who wrote it, and he received it Mipi Chagai, Zechariah, Malachi, from Chagai, Zechariah and Malachi. V'nizdazo Eretz Yisrael arba me'ois parsa al arba me'ois parsa. Eretz Yisrael shook, trembled at the time when Yonasan ben Azil was being metargem the Nevi'im. Yotza Baskil, a baskel sounded va'omra and said, Mihu zeh shegila storai lebnei Adam. Who is the one who is revealing the secrets of the Torah to people? It seems that there are secrets that were formerly hidden, that were written in the Targum of Yonasan. Omar Yonasan ben Azil Araglov va'omar. Yonasan ben Azil stood up and said, Anihu shegilisi storecha lebnei Adam. I am the one that am revealing your secrets to people. Goli v'yodu alufanecho. It's clear and known to you. Sheloi lichvoid yosisi. I didn't do it for my own covered. V'loi lichvoid beis abba. Not for the covered of my namesake. Elo lichvoidcha osisi. I did it just for your covered. Shelo yirbu machlokas b'Yisrael, in order to prevent the other people who will want to be mefarish the psukim from arguing with each other as to what the psukim mean. V'oid bikesh legalu is tirgum al ksuvim. Yonasan ben Azil was going to also translate and explain the ksuvim. Yotzo baskel v'amraloi, the baskel emanated and said, Dayecho, it's enough that you are metargem neviim, do not be metargem ksuvim. Maitama, why not? Mishum de'isbe kates Moshiach, because in the Targum of ksuvim, it will become apparent the time that Mashiach will have to come, in the psukim of Daniel, and Hashem did not want this to be revealed. Now the Gemara is referring back to the Targum on Torah. Says the Gemara, "V'Targum shel Torah unklus hager oimri." We just mentioned that the Targum of Torah was written by Unklus. V'Omer of Iker bar Ovin, Omer of Chananel, Omer Rav. Is it not said in the name of Rav that Maidich Siv, when it says in the Pasuk, in Nehemiah, Vayikru b'Sefer Torah Elokim mefayrash v'soim sechel v'yavinu b'mikra. It's a pasuk in Nehemiah, and the Gemara is going to darshan this pasuk. Vayikru b'Sefer Torah Elokim. Ze mikra is referring to the mikra, to the psukim. Mefayrash, the word mefayrash, ze targum. V'soim sechel elu psukim. Knowing where one pasuk ends and the next pasuk starts, that was also part of the Torah. It's important to know it, and is referred to by the same seichel. Vayovinu b'mikra, elu piskei taimim. To actually understand the psukim, one needs to have the tamim, the trop, and they help us understand the pasuk. V'omri lo, some say that yovinu b'mikra, elu ha-mesayras. They are the mesayras of which words are written chosar and which words are written yeser. So how could you say before, in the name of Rabbi Yirmiyah, that Unklus wrote the Targum of Torah, when in the Brisa it's apparent that already in the time of Ezra, in the Psukim in Nehemiah, there's reference made to the Targum. The word Mefayrash is referring to the Targum. Answers the Gemara, it's true. The Targum was already there before Unklus. Shachachum, they forgot the Targum. The Chazru and Unklus and his Rebbes, they were the ones that were Chazru v'Yistum, they brought the Targum back to our knowledge. Now the Gemara asks, Maishna doiraisa, why is it that when Unklus was metargem the Torah, Deloy is Daza, Eretz Yisrael did not shake, Va'ad, but when the Targum of Nevi'im was said, is Dazeh, Eretz Yisrael shock? Answers the Gemara, doiraisa mefarosha milsa. In the Chumash, everything is clear. And the Targum is just translating and explaining what it says in the Psukim. The Nevi, the Targum of Nevi'im, Ike Mili de Mefirshon, there are some things that are explicit and understandable even without the Targum, Ve'ike Mili de Mesatmon, and there are some things that are very unclear, and only with the aid of Targum can they understand it, and these included certain secrets that caused Eretz Yisrael to shake. And now the Gemara is going to give us some examples of things that are not explicit in the Psukim, and the Targum revealed them. Tichsiv, it says in the Pasuk, in Zechariah, Bayoim hahu yigdal hamispeid b'Yerushalayim, on that day there would be a big hesped in Yerushalayim, kamispeid, like the misped of Hadad Rimoin, bebikas Megidon, like the hesped of Hadad Rimoin in the valleys of Gidon. V'Omer Rav Yosef says, Ilmorei Tirguma Dahaikra, if not for the Targum in this pasuk, Lo Yadanu Maika Oma, we would have no idea what the pasuk is comparing the hesped of La'osid Lovei to. In the whole of Tanakh, we don't find a hesped of Hadad Rimoin in Bikas Megidon, until Yonasan explained to us what the pasuk means. he says that were two espedim, and the hesped of La'osid Lovoi is compared to them both. But Yoimahu, on that day, La'osid Lovoi, Yizgei Mispada, there will be a very great hesped, Birushalayim in Yerushalayim, Kemispeda de Achov bar Omri, like the hesped on Achov bar Omri, who was a Melech Israel, Diktol Yosei Hadad Rimoin ben Tavrimoin Baromes Gilad, who was killed by Hadad Rimoin, the king of Aram, in Romes Gilad. And also, Kemispede de Yeshua bar Omoin, like the hesped on Yeshayahu Melech Yehuda, Diktol Yosei Paroi Chagira bebikas Megiddo. He was killed by Paroi, who was handicapped, who was the king of Mitzrayim, in the bikas Megiddo. And now, after the Gemara explained the value, the depth of Sefer Daniel, that hidden in it is the time that Mashiach has to come, the Gemara is now going to discuss the Madrega of Daniel, who saw in his Nevuah what other Nevi'im did not see. Says the Gemara. It says in the Pasuk in Daniel that he saw in a prophetic vision what was going to be La'osid Lovoi. V'ra'isi ani Daniel levadi. I, Daniel, saw es hamare. V'ha'anoshim ashahoyu imi lo yira'u es hamara. Only I saw this vision, and the other Nevi'im with me did not see this vision. Aval charoda gedoyla noflo aleim v'yivrachu b'heichove. They did, however, feel a tremendous awe and fear, and it caused them to run away and hide. Man ninhu, who were those people? Anoshim, those Anoshim that were with him, that only felt that something was going on, but did not actually see the vision. Rabbi Yirmiyah, says Rabbi Yirmiyah, V'item Reb Chia bar Abba, Ze Chagai, Zechariah uMalachi. These were Chagai, Zechariah and Malachi. Says the Gemara, Inhu Adifa Minei. In one aspect, Chagai, Zechariah, Malachi were on a higher level than Daniel. V'ihu Odif Minayu, and on one level he was greater than them. Inhu Adifa Minei, in what aspect were they greater than him? The Inhu Navi, Chagai, Zechariah, Malachi were prophets sent by Hashem to give over messages to Klal Yisrael. V'ihu Lav Novi, but Daniel was never sent on a message by Hashem to give over a nevuah to Klal Yisrael. That's how Rashi explains this. V'ihu Odif Minayu, and Daniel was greater than them in this aspect. De'ihu Chaza, that in this particular instant, he was the one that saw the prophetic vision, V'inhu Leichazu, and they did not see. Asks the Gemara, V'chi me'achar de Leichazu, since they didn't see the vision, Mai Tama Ibatu, why did they get afraid? Answers the Gemara, Afal gav de'inu Leichazi, even though they did not see, Mazlaihu Chazi, their muzzle, the sar, that was associated to their neshamas, did see, and therefore they felt this pachad. And now the Gemara is going to discuss this concept of feeling a fear without understanding where the fear is coming from. Omar Ravina says, Ravina Shmamino, we could learn from the above Gemara, Haiman de Miavis, somebody who feels scared, Afal gav de iulei chazi, even though he does not see what there is to be scared of, Mazlaihu chazi, there's some spirit that's associated to him that does see what there is to be afraid of, and that's why this person feels afraid. Adzravina, Maitekante, how can this person protect himself that indeed he should not get hurt by whatever power it is that there is to be afraid of? Says the Gemara, Likre Krishma, he should read the Shema, V'ikoim b'mekoim atinefes, and if he's in a place where he's not allowed to say the Shema, Linshoif miduchtei, he should jump away from where he is, Arba garmidi, 4 amis. V'iloyin, if he cannot jump away, Leimahoch, he should say the following, Izo de beitabochai, Shmeino minoi. The goats in the butcher are fatter than me. Which means telling the mazik, go to the butcher and find somebody fatter than me to devour. Continues the Gemara. We mentioned previously in the Sugya that the pasuk that says Medina, Medina, Ve'ir, Ve'ir is coming for a drasha. So the Gemara is going to say, now we're going to learn a drasha for the rest of the pasuk as well. V'hashta de omris Medina or Medina Ve'ir Ve'ir l'drasha. Now that we explained that the words Medina or Medina Ve'ir Ve'ir are coming to teach us a drasha, Mishpacha or Mishpacha l'may osa. The double term in the same pasuk of Mishpacha, Mishpacha, what's that coming to teach us? Omer Rabbi Yosi Bar Chinana, says Rabbi Yosi Bar Chinana, Lahavi, in order to tell us an extra chiddush, that Mishpachos Kahuna or Levia, that even Kehanim and Levim, Shemevatlim Avoidasam, they are mevatel their Avoida, Uboim Lishmoya Mikra Megillah, even though they have Avoid in the Beis HaMikdash, they stop what they're doing to make time to hear the Megillah. The Amar of Yehuda Marav, since Rabbi Yehuda Marav said, Kehanim Bavoidasam, Kehanim doing the Avoida, Ulevim B'duchanim and Levim singing during the time of the Avodah, V'Yisrael b'mamodam, and the Yisraelim who have their share in watching and davening for the Hatzlocha of the Avodah, Kulam mevatlin Avoidasam, they're all mevatel the Avodah, Uboim lishmoya mikra Megillah, and they come to hear the Megillah. Tanyana mehachi, we also found a Brisa who says what Rabbi Yosi Bar Chinana and Rav said. What does it say in the Brisa? Kehanim b'Avoidasam, Ulevim b'duchonam, v'Yisrael b'ma'amodam, kulam mevatlin Avoidasam, uboim lishmoya mikra Megillah. Mikan, from the fact that we know that Kehanim are mevatel the Avodah, in order to hear Megillah, we learn that Samchu shall base Rabbi. This was the source that Rabbi and his Talmidim based themselves on, shemevatlin Talmud Torah, that one is mevatel Limud HaTorah, uboim lishmoya mikra Megillah, in order to come and hear the Megillah being read. And they learned it out, kal v'chomer me'avodah, a kal v'chomer from the fact that the Kehanim are mevatel avodah in the Beis HaMikdash. What's the kal v'chomer? Uma avodah shi chamura. If avodah, which is very chamur, mevatlin, and nonetheless they are mevatel avodah to come and hear the Megillah, Talmud Torah, which is more kal than avodah, Loi kol shekain, even more so, it should be understood that one stops learning in order to hear the Megillah. And the Mefarshim explain why is it to be taken for granted that Avodah is more chomor than Talmud Torah. Asks the Gemara, V'Avodah chamura mit Talmud Torah? It's so clear to you that Avodah is more chomor than Talmud Torah. V'Oksiv, it says in the Pasuk, V'Yihi b'Yosi Yeshua b'Yerichai, when Yeshua was conquering Yerichai, V'Yisaino V'Yar, he lifted up his eyes and he saw V'Hine Ish Oimid L'Negdoi, there was a Malach standing in front of him with a drawn sword, threatening Klal Yisrael. V'Yishtachu, and Yeshua bowed to the Malach. And now before the Gemara actually follows through with the question, the Gemara deviates and asks, V'Heich Avid Hachi, how was it permitted for Yeshua to bow to a Malach who was speaking to him at night? V'Omer Yeshua ben Levi, did Yeshua ben Levi not say, Osa la'odom shitin sholem lechaveri balayla, it's osa to say sholem even to one's friend at night, when saying sholem with Hashem's name? Chayshinon shem hasheitu, we are afraid that maybe it's a shade, it's a mazik. And kol shekain, that it's also to bow down to one of these mazikim. And why was Yeshua not suspicious that maybe this ish, oimed lenegdoi, maybe it was a mazik? Answers the Gemara, Shani Hasam, over there it was clear to Yeshua that this was not a mazik. To Omar Lei, since this malach said to him, Ki ani sar tzva Hashem, the malach said to him, I am a malach, I'm a kodesh malach, and not a mazik. The Dilma Meshakre, why was Yeshua not suspicious that this was really a mazik, and that was lying to him? Says the Gemara, Gemiri, there's a Maseira, Deloi Mafki Shem Shemayim Levatola. Even the mazikim do not say Hashem's name when it's not the truth. And since this malach said Hashem's name, Ki ani sar tzva Hashem, he was definitely saying the truth, and therefore Yeshua knew it wasn't a mazik. And now the Gemara is going back to where it left off in the Kasha. Omar Loi, the Malach said to Yeshua, Emesh, bitaltem tomit shel beinu arbaim. This evening, before it became night, you mevatel the korban tomit shel beinu arbaim. Why are you waiting in ambush in the town? It's night time, it's evening time. You're not fighting any wars at night. And you should have gone and brought the korban tomit. And also, va'achshav, and now that it's already night, which is not the time for war, bitaltem Talmud Torah. You should have gone back to the camp and learnt Torah, not just to stand here on guard in the town. Omar lo Yeshua asked the Malach, Al eza mehen bosa, on which one of the two Averas are you coming to punish us? The Avera that we didn't bring the Korban Tomid, or the Avera of Bittul Torah? Omar lo, the Malach said, Ata bosi, I'm coming for the Avera that you're doing now. Now it's night, and it's Bittul Torah. Miyad, immediately, Vayolen Yeshua balaylo hahu b'toich ha'emek. The pasuk says that Yeshua rested in the depths. V'omer Rabbi Yochanan explained this that melamed shelon b'umko shel halacha. He went and delved into the depths of halacha of Torah. So you see here that Talmud Torah bothered Hashem, bothered the Malach even more than the Korban Tamid. V'omer Shmuel bar Unya commented that from this story it's clear that Godel Talmud Torah Yosem Akravas Tumidim. Talmud Torah is even greater than Avodas HaTamid. Shenemar, as it says, Atabasi. I came to punish you for the fact that you're not learning Torah, not for the fact that you did not bring the Korban Tamid. So how can you bring a Kal V'chomer that if you're Mevatel Avodah for Megillah, that you're also Mevatel Torah for Megillah? Says the Gemara, Loi Kasha, it's not a Kasha. Hada Rabim, Hada Yachid. It could be that in truth, Avodah is more chomor than Torah of a Yochid. The Malach that stressed the severity of the Bittul Torah even more than the Avodah was talking about the Talmud Torah of the Rabbim, of the whole of Klal Yisrael, and indeed that's worse than Avodah. Continues the Gemara and asks, Uda Yochid Kal? Can it really be that Talmud Torah is pushed away, is nidche by Mikra Megillah, the Mevatel Talmud Torah to hear the Megillah? Votnan, did we not learn in a Mishnah, in Moed Cotton, that Noshim b'Moed ma'anois, that even on Chol HaMoed, the Noshim, when it comes to a Hesped, they would raise their voices, as was customary by a Hesped. Avlei metapchis, they would not smack themselves on their hearts. Rabbi Shmuel said, Im hoyu smuchos lamita, those women that were close to the nifta, metapchis, they are also metapeach. Because of kvoid hames, they bang their hearts. Baroshei chadoshim, bechanukah ubepurim. On Rosh Chodesh Chanukah upurim, ma'anes umetapchis. They are also ma'ane, they raise their voices in Hesped, and also they bang their chests. Bezeh ubezeh, and on Chol HaMoed, and Rosh Chodesh, and Chanukah, and Purim, einon mekoinenois. They do not do koinenois. And mekoinenois is where one of the women speak, and all the others answer. V'omar Rabbi bar Huna. Rabbi bar Huna says, ein moed b'fnei Talmud Chacham. If a Talmud Chacham was nifta, then there's no Chol HaMoed, the halacha of Chol HaMoed is moved aside, and there are metapchos and mekoinenois on Chol HaMoed, like would be on a regular weekday. Kol shekein Chanukah Purim. And even more so than Chanukah Purim, that they can be mekoinen. Since Chanukah and Purim are even more kal than Chol HaMoed. And even though this whole process of metapchos, ma'anois, mekoinenois are going to cause bittul of Mikra Megillah, they can't be in shul hearing the Megillah if they're busy with the Levaya, with the Hesped. And nonetheless, because of Kovod of a Talmud Chacham, which would seem to be compared to Talmud Torah of a Yochid, or the Kovod of a Talmud Torah of a Yochid, and it's even stronger than Mikra Megillah. And this is contrary to what Rabbi said before, that they were mevatel Talmud Torah in order to hear Megillah. Answers the Gemara, Kvoid Torah ka'omras, how can you compare Limud HaTorah to Kovod HaTorah? Even though Megillah is stronger and overrides the Limud HaTorah of a Yachid, but the Kovod HaTorah of a Yachid overrides even Megillah. Kovod Torah de Yachid Chomur, the Kovod HaTorah shown even to a Yachid is more Chomur than Megillah, as in the case of showing respect to a Talmud Chacham who's nifta. Talmud Torah de Yachid, however, the Talmud Torah of a Yachid Kal is more lenient than Megillah, and therefore one is mevatel Talmud Torah to hear Megillah. Now the Gemara is going to learn some other halachas, which mitzvahs are doicha Megillah, and which mitzvahs are Megillah doicha. Says the Gemara, Omar Rava said, Pshitali, it's clear to me that Avodah or Mikra Megillah Odif. One is mevatel Avodah in order to hear the reading of the Megillah. Mid Rabbi Yosi bar Chanina, like we saw before on Daf Gimel Amud Aleph, in the name of Rabbi Yosi bar Chanina. He learned this out from Mishpacha or Mishpacha, that even Mishpachis of Kohuna and Leviah are mevatel their avodah to hear Megillah. It's also pashut to me, says Rava, Talmud Torah Mikra Megillah Odif. One is mevatel Talmud Torah for Mikra Megillah, midasamchu shel beis Rebbe, like we saw in the name of Rabbi, who learns it out of Kal V'chomer from avodah. It was also pashut to Rava that Talmud Torah umeis mitzvah. If you have an option of either learning Torah or burying a meis mitzvah, somebody who's died and there's nobody to tend for him, Meis mitzvah odif, then tending to the meis mitzvah takes preference. Midatanya, this is learned from a brayso that mevatlin Talmud Torah letzas ameis ulachnosas kala. One is always mevatl Talmud Torah in order to contribute in the burial of somebody who has died, or when a kala is on her way to the chuppah. It's also pasha to Rava that avodah or meis mitzvah, when somebody has to choose between doing the avodah in the Beis Hamikdash or burying a meis mitzvah, that meis mitzvah is odif, meis mitzvah is before avodah. And it's learnt out, mi ula achoisoi. There's an extra word, achoisoi, that it says by the parasha of Nazir, and from that word we learn out that meis mitzvah is odif than avodah. The Tanya, as we saw in a brayso, it says in the pasuk that a Nazir is not allowed to be metame himself on a meis, not to his father, not to his mother, not to his brother, not to his sister. And the Gemara asks, ula achoisoi ma Talmud leimar. It already says in the pasuk you're not allowed to metame yourself to a meis. Why does it have to explicitly specify that one is not allowed to be metamed to one's sister? And the Brayso learns from here that if somebody was going to shech the korban Pesach or to do a bris milah on his son, and he hears that one of his 7 closest relatives, father, mother, brother, sister, wife, son or daughter, and died, and if he tends to them, he will become Tomei and will not be able to do the Korban Pesach. Because he's Tomei, nor will he be able to do Milah for his son, he simply won't have time for it that day. And there's a mitzvah and chiyuv to mal on the 8th day. V'shamash hameis lemeis. Yochel, I might have thought Yitamei, that he should be Metamei to this relative, and he should be Doicha, the Korban Pesach or the Milah. Omros, that's why it says, Lo Yitamei, you should not be Metamei to them. In the same way as a Nazir is not Mevatel his Nazirus in order to be Metamei to one of his Krovim, so too one should not be Mevatel Pesach or Milah by being Metamei to one's Krovim. Continues the Brayso, Yochel Keshem She'enim Metamei La'achoisei Kach Enim Metamei Lemeis Mitzvah. I might have thought that in the same way as one is not Metamei to a sister, so too one should not be metamei to a meis mitzvah, and one should rather leave the meis mitzvah and do the korban pesach or the milah. Talmud leima, says in the pasuk, ula achoisoi, that only achoisoi, la'achoisoi hu de'enim metamei, only to one's sister one should not be metamei, but there is another type of niftar that one should be metamei to, avol metamei lemeis mitzvah. If there's no one else to tend to the niftar, then one should be metamei to the meis mitzvah, even at the expense of Korban Pesach, which is avodah, and this was the Mekoyer to Rava that meis mitzvah is odif than avodah. Continues the Gemara Boya Rava. Rava had the following suffix. After telling us all the halachas that Rava was clear about, there's one that he wasn't sure about. Mikra Megillah or meis mitzvah. If somebody has to choose between Mikra Megillah and meis mitzvah, hay minayu odif, which one of them should come first? Mikra Megillah odif, are you going to say that Megillah is first mishum pirsum in nisa, because there's an element of pirsum in nisa which is very important regarding Megillah, or dilma meis mitzvah adif, or maybe it's better to tend to the nifta mishum kveda breis. It's not covered that the nifta should remain in an unburied state. Says the Gemara, Basar de Boya Hoda Pashta. After Rava voiced his suffix, it became clear to him that meis mitzvah odif, it's better to tend to the niftar. The Omar Mar, because Mar said, Godel kvoida briais t'shedoicha es lo yisaseh shebatayra. Kvoida briais is very severe and very important, and it's even doicha a lo yisaseh in the Torah. And if it's doicha, a lav in the Torah, kol sheken it's going to be doicha mikra Megillah. Now the Gemara is continuing with a new sugya, coming back to what we saw in Daf Beis Amud Beis, that those ayoris that are somuch, that are close to the krochim hamukofin chomim imois Yeshua ben Nun, have the same halacha as those krochim. Gufa, Omar Rav Yeshua ben Levi, said Rav Yeshua ben Levi, krach, one of the krochim hamukofin chayma, the kol hasamuch loy, or anything which is close to the krach, the kol hanira imoy, or anything which can be seen with it, nidain kekrach, has the same halacha as the krach itself, and one reads the Megillah there on the 15th, not on the 14th. The Gemara is now going to explain this memra of Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi with the following brayso. Tana, it says in the brayso, samuch afal pisha eino nire, if the town or village in question is samuch to a krach, even though it's not seen with the krach, or nira, it's seen with the krach, afal pi she'eino samuch lo, even though it's not close to the krach, both have the same halacha that they are nidoin kekrach. The Gemara is going to explain. Bishleima nira afal pi she'eino samuch mishkachas lo. I can understand how one can be seen with the krach, even though it's not close to the krach. Kegoin de yosva b'roi shahar. If this town is on the top of a mountain, and it can be seen from the krach, even though it's very far away. How can you be close and not be seen? Since it's closer than a mill, as we saw before on Daf Beis Amud Beis, it would be taken for granted it can be seen from the krach. Omer Rabbi Yirmiyah says, Rabbi Yirmiyah, sheyusheves benachal. If this town is in a valley, and therefore the krach cannot see this town, even though it might be very close by. Now the Gemara is moving to the next sugya to discuss some of the halachas of mukafin chayma. V'omer Rabbi Shua ben Levi said, krach, sheyoshav ulebesoif hukaf. If at the beginning there were first people that were populating this town, and only afterwards they put a wall around it, nidoin kekfar, it's got the same halacha as a kfar that was not mukaf chayma. Ma'itama, why is this not called mukafin chayma? It says in the pasuk of Bate Ori Chayma, which is another set of halachas that are dependent on whether the town had a wall around it from the time Yeshua ben Nun or not. We won't discuss the halachas here, they're going to be discussed in Masechet Erechin. But in the pasuk, in the parasha of Bate Ori Chayma, it says, D'chsiv v'ish ki yimker beis moishav ir chayma. It seems that they populated an Ir Chayma, which means that it was first an Ir Chayma before it became populated. Shehukaf ulebesoif yoshav, v'lo sheyoshav ulebesoif hukaf. If it first became populated and then a wall was put around it, it's not called Orei Chayma. Now the Gemara continues with another halacha. V'omer B'Shua ben Levi, says B'Shua ben Levi, krach she'ein be'asara batlonim. A krach that does not have at least 10 people that do not work, and they are sustained and fed by the tzibur, in order that they should be constantly available in the shuls for tefillas, for a minyan. Nidoin kekfar. They have the halachas of a kfar, of a village, and they can read the Megillah in the Yom HaKnisa, as we saw at the beginning of the Masechta. Says the Gemara, Maikomash Malon, what's the chiddush of Bishua ben Levi with this halacha? Tanina, it's an Furusha Brisa that we're going to see in Daf Yomi Shiur. Ezu Ir Gedoyla, what's the definition of a big city that reads the Megillah on the 14th and is not Makdim Liyem HaKnisa? Kol Sheyesh Ba'asara Batlonim. If it has at least 10 people that are available for the minyonim. Pochiz Mikan. If there's less than 10 people like this, Harei Ze Kfar, it's a Kfar, which is Makdim Liyem HaKnisa. What was the chiddush of Rabbi Shua ben Levi? Answers the Gemara, Krach Istrichlei. A krach which is much larger than a regular city, and it has many marketplaces in it, and attracts many people from all round. Afal gav de mikali le me'alma, even though many people come to this krach on business, and many of them are available for the minyanim, since they only work regularly when they're in their hometowns. Nonetheless, since the Asara Batlonim are not residents of this krach, it's not called a krach, and there's always the risk that there won't be people who are committed and available for the minyanim, and therefore they can be makdim liyom haknisa. Says the Gemara of Omer Rabbi Shua ben Levi, another member of Rabbi Shua ben Levi, krach shechorav ulebesoif yoshav. If a krach got destroyed and then they rebuilt it, nidoin kekrach, it has the halacha of a krach. And now the Gemara explains my chorav. What's the definition? What type of krach are we talking about that was chorav? Ilema, are you going to say chorvu chaymoisav, that its walls got destroyed, that it was mukaf chayma, and then the walls came down, and then they rebuilt the walls? That can't be. Yoshav in, lo yoshav loy. Will it only regain its status of a mukafin chayma once it gets rebuilt? Vatanya, did we not learn in a Brisa, Rabbi ben Yossi said, Asher loy chayma, that the loy is written with a vav and an aleph, which means at the same time it has a wall and doesn't have a wall, to teach us that afal pisha ein loy achshav, even though it does not have a wall now, since v'hoya loy koidem l'chein, it had a wall once, it's got the din of a mukafin chayma. So what does Rabbi Shua ben Levi mean? That if a krach was chorav, then only if it was yoshav again, it regains its status of a krach. Elo, says the Gemara, my chorav, shechorav me'asora batlonim. If at any point a big town goes down from 10 batlonim, and at any point does not have 10 people available for the minyanim, and then it loses its status of a ear that needs to read the Megillah on the 14th, and they can be makdim liyom haknisa, in the event that afterwards it becomes resettled with 10 batlonim, at that point it regains the status of a big city, and they have to read the Megillah on the 14th only, and not on the yom haknisa.